Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this Finance Watch webinar. We're excited today to present an important study that's been conducted with Finance Watch and partners. IAF from Hamburg is with us in this call to present the situation from Germany. After a couple of short welcome words from myself, we'll dive into the content, have an overview of this study, the report on the basic payments situation for basic payments, and also then dive a little bit deeper into the situation on the ground in Germany. So a quick couple of words, the background to this report. We're in a very difficult economic situation for consumers in Europe, particularly for people who are on low income or with other different kinds of vulnerabilities. COVID-19 has had a huge impact on many of these groups, as has the cost of living crisis. What we see is that several types of financial services, basic services, are really fundamental to allow citizens to participate fully and equally in society. And a basic payment account is perhaps even the most important, the first service, as it allows you to access a salary, social benefits, pay rent, taxes, and is also a prerequisite for access to other financial services, such as insurance, pensions, etc., in many cases. We believe it's key for financial and social inclusion. That's why we are very concerned by the numbers of unbanked people in the EU. Some of the highest numbers that we've seen have been in Romania. Around 31% of the population did not have, age 15 or over, did not have a bank account in 2021. We see extremely high numbers as well in Bulgaria, Hungary, 12 to 16%, Croatia, Cyprus, the Czech Republic, Greece, Hungary, Lithuania, Poland, Slovak Republic. Huge numbers still as well, even if smaller percentages than Romania, Bulgaria and Hungary, with still 4 to 8% of the population unbanked. It's a key issue to get right, and it's a key issue to continue to push forward on the EU agenda. It's an issue which we need to look at, and this report looks into the reality on the ground and puts forward the case for reforming the basic payment account in Europe. So our first presentation is from our very own Finance Watch's Peter Norwood. Peter is a senior research and advocacy officer in charge of consumer protection and financial inclusion issues at Finance Watch. He leads the work. He's led the work on this study and report. He has extensive experience in financial services policy, both in the private sector and also as a seconded national expert for the European Commission and having worked at the Financial Conduct Authority. He's no stranger to these topics and brings a lot of experience to this study and to this work. I'd like to hand over to Peter for the presentation of the report.
Right, many thanks, Paul, for the very kind introduction. First, I want to start off by, welcoming you all to this event on this timely and important topic. Thank you very, very much for attending this event with us here today. So I will spend the next roughly 20 minutes providing you with an overview of the study underpinning the report on basic payment accounts that we've published today. I'll give you an overview, first of all, of the aim and background of the research underpinning the study itself. Then I'll move on and present to you the main findings of the study, and then conclude with providing you with an overview of the key policy recommendations that we believe should be implemented to the pad, because we believe that because of the findings that we've uncovered, there's a need to revise the pad, and I'll present you with the policy revisions we think are necessary in that respect. So I will start off first with providing you with a short overview of the aim and background of the study itself. So the EU Payment Accounts Directive, which entered into force in 2014, provides all citizens in the EU, including vulnerable consumers such as people on low incomes, homeless and refugees, with the right to access a payment account with basic features. To ensure that vulnerable consumers have access to basic payment accounts, PAD stipulates that these products must be widely available, that consumers must be made sufficiently aware of their existence, and that they need to be affordable. To this end, from September until December 2023, Finance Watch conducted research to examine the effectiveness of the PAD with regards to ensuring that vulnerable consumers really do have access to basic payment accounts. As part of this exercise, we carried out a mystery shopping exercise based on 53 real case studies from 3 different EU member states, i.e. Spain, Germany, and Romania. These particular member states were chosen to represent 3 different geographical areas, South, Center, and East, to have geographical representativeness of the EU payment accounts market of the European Union. Finance Watch collaborated with external consultants, one of which, the EFF, which Duygu represents, will be presenting more details on the German mystery shopping. So we collaborated with these external consultants to collect the data. The data gathered was sourced from both online and offline information. Mystery shoppers in each country were asked to go to bank branches, assume a profile of a vulnerable consumer, and by these means gather the information from the study. The mystery shopping exercise tested if vulnerable consumers are able to access a basic payment account, how onerous the process to open such an account is for these consumers, and how information about these accounts is made available to them. The data collected by the mystery shopping exercise was complemented by data gathered from a qualitative questionnaire, which the consultants from the 3 member states were asked to complete. The qualitative questionnaire provided more information on some important topics that could not be fully captured by a mystery shopping exercise, such as, for example, information about the awareness-raising measures for basic payment accounts by public authorities. Now, before I start presenting the main findings of the report and policy recommendations, let's take a quick step back and look at why ensuring access to payment accounts for vulnerable consumers is so important. Right, thank you. So access to a payment account is key for both financial and social inclusion. You need access to a bank account to perform essential tasks, such as receiving a salary or social benefit, pay rent, or pay taxes. In addition, without a bank account, you lack access to other essential financial services, such as general insurance or pensions products. For this reason, access to essential financial services, such as payment accounts, is part of the European Pillar of Social Rights. Despite this, however, as Paul already mentioned to you earlier, the number of people without a payment account in the EU is still high in some EU member states. At the same time, the number of EU citizens falling into the category of vulnerable has increased in recent years and is set to increase due to the consequences of the COVID and cost of living crises. As illustrated in the graph on the slide, data shows that the number of EU citizens at risk of poverty or social exclusion in the EU is high. In 2022, 21.6% of the EU population, that is roughly 95.3 million people, fell into this category. This is an issue across all EU member states, including economically stronger ones, such as Germany, for example, where the percentage in 2022 was also 20.9% of the population, which is quite high. This is also why, as revealed in the latest Eurobarometer survey that was recently published, the fight against poverty and social exclusion are one of the main campaign issues for EU citizens heading into the upcoming June 2024 European elections. Now, I will present to you the main access barriers to basic payment accounts vulnerable consumers face, which were uncovered by our report. One of the main access barriers we identified is cost. Our report shows that in some member states, basic payment accounts are not affordable. In Germany, for example, basic payment accounts are very expensive, with fees across financial institutions ranging from more than 58 euros per year to 143 euros per year. Now, this excludes actually the basic services linked to an account that are essential in, just operating a bank account, such as executing payments and transactions, making direct debits, credit transfers, etc. If you include the fees for all of these basic operations as well, then the total fee is even higher. And according to data from Stiftung Warentest, a German consumer association involved in investigating and comparing goods and services in Germany, can then go up to more than staggering 300 euros per year. Our report shows furthermore that in Romania, basic payment accounts are not affordable either. In Romania, basic payment accounts should be free for vulnerable consumers under Romanian national law, so the law transposing the PAD into national Romanian law. But in reality, these accounts are sometimes packaged with other products, such as overdrafts or insurance, and are therefore not free after all. If vulnerable consumers want a basic payment account without these additional services, they have to explicitly request it. However, and this is the problem, consumers are usually unaware of this possibility, and banks don't proactively inform them about this either. So then they just end up, with these products that first of all are for them unsuitable, and second of all, then come also with them with a cost. Moreover, in Romania, the rules to determine if a person can be considered vulnerable and thus offered a basic payment account for free is flawed, and therefore can result in vulnerable consumers being denied a free basic payment account. Again, under the law transposing the PAD into national law in Romania, a consumer is considered vulnerable if either their monthly income does not exceed the equivalent of 60% of the gross average salary in Romania, as predicted in the last macroeconomic forecast published by the National Forecasting Commission in the current year for the following year, or if their income from the last 6 months does not exceed the equivalent of 60% of the average gross salary in Romania. However, and this is the big problem here, if the consumer has had an income that is higher than this threshold in 1 month or more within the last 6 months, they're not eligible. This creates a potential barrier for consumers with low or regular incomes, such as gig workers, for example. In Spain, in contrast, this is a best practice. The basic payment account is actually affordable. Here, the fee for basic payment accounts is nationally regulated at 36 euros per year and is free if a consumer's gross household income is less than 25,200 euros a year, which is reasonable considering the national income levels in Spain. Now, the high fees in Germany and the Romanian law, barring and or making it difficult for some consumers on irregular incomes to access basic payment accounts, are possible because the current text of PAD, so the current version of PAD, allows for reasonable fees to be charged for the basic payment account in each member state without defining what reasonable is. In addition, it does not include any prescriptive rules about any special pricing arrangements for vulnerable consumers or how vulnerability should be determined, allowing therefore member states a lot of leeway here, and then allowing the kind of flawed rules as we have witnessed in Romania. Now, a second important access barrier for vulnerable consumers identified in the study is availability. While all major credit institutions, and thus a sufficient number of credit institutions, offer the basic payment account in theory, on paper, in practice, the availability of basic payment accounts is effectively much lower, given that most financial institutions are very reluctant to offer basic payment accounts to anyone. Our data shows that financial institutions do not offer basic payment accounts proactively in the vast majority of cases. As you can see in the table on the slide in front of you, in Spain, the basic payment account is proactively offered only 48% of the time. In Germany, 53%, and in Romania, only 31% of the time. Even if a consumer explains to the credit institution that they are a vulnerable consumer, they're still only rarely offered such an account in Germany and Romania. This is clearly a problem, as most consumers in the EU are not aware of the existence and the right to a basic payment account, and thus will not proactively ask for one, as we will explore in more detail later. Another key access barrier are the information requirements when opening a basic payment account. Some documents requested to open the account create unjustified barriers. For example, refugees, asylum seekers, and homeless people are often prevented from opening a basic payment account because they do not have the proper identification and residency documents requested from them to open a basic payment account. Our study was not able to collect any precise data on the size of the problem. However, a report by the European Banking Authority from 2021 confirms that refugees and asylum seekers are often denied a basic payment account, as credit institutions are reluctant to engage in business relations with consumers who cannot provide proper identification documents due to anti-money laundering and combating the financing of terrorism concerns. Another example of unjustified barriers created by excessive documentation requirements would be that consumers are often asked to provide proof of a permanent address, which is something that homeless consumers cannot provide. And in Germany, and I'm sure Duygu will go into more detail on this later, our mystery shopping exercise even revealed, and I think this is outrageous, that the fact that someone has debt can create an unjustified barrier to open a basic account. Our mystery shopping exercise in Germany showed that some bank employees are alarmed when a consumer mentions that they have recently seen a debt advisor, even though there aren't any justified grounds whatsoever to factor debt into the decision of whether to offer a basic payment account or not. This is not a consumer credit product. Very often, these are provided to vulnerable consumers to whom also things such as overdraft facilities are not suitable, so should not be offered to them along with the account anyway. So again, factoring debt here into the equation is absolutely an unjustified barrier. Lastly, a key access barrier identified in our report is awareness. To ensure access to basic payment accounts, consumers, including vulnerable consumers, must be aware of their existence, where they can obtain a basic payment account, and their access conditions. Article 20 of the PAD attempts to achieve this goal by providing very high-level, non-prescriptive rules obliging both member states and financial institutions to raise awareness about basic payment accounts, including among all vulnerable groups of society. Our data suggests, however, that this existing provision is not sufficient in meeting this objective. In all 3 EU member states covered by our study, the awareness about the existence of the basic payment account among vulnerable groups is low, and the reason for this are inadequate awareness-raising measures by financial institutions and member states. Consumers, for example, are only provided with very little information, or sometimes no information at all, about basic payment accounts at the branches of financial institutions. In a mystery shopping exercise, the staff working in credit institutions did not know much about the characteristics, fees, and access conditions for basic payment accounts. Instead, consumers were often told by branch staff to have a look at the website, as they could not help them in the branch. In addition, any marketing brochures of the branches, again, if even available at all, did not provide a lot of information about these product offerings. And in addition, the information about basic payment accounts on financial institutions' websites is poor as well. The existence of the credit institution's basic payment account offerings is sometimes hard to find on the credit institution's websites in Germany. And in Romania, basic payment accounts are often not even mentioned at all on financial institutions' websites. Now I will turn to the last slide, and here I will provide you with a number of revisions, and this is not exhaustive, by the way. So for our complete list of policy recommendations, please do refer to the report we have published today. But I will now quickly provide you with the key policy recommendations that we think are necessary to make the PAD reach its full potential. First of all, to ensure that cost is not an access barrier for consumers on no or low incomes, PAD should mandate that the basic payment account is free for vulnerable consumers. And vulnerability should be determined by a harmonized approach set out in level 2 of the PAD by the European Banking Authority, take into account national specificities such as national salary levels. Secondly, to ensure basic payment accounts are proactively offered, in particular to vulnerable consumers, PAD should mandate payment account providers to always offer the basic payment account as the default option. Thirdly, PAD should include a provision enabling consumers lacking proper identification documents to open a basic payment account. Here, to accommodate the justified AML concerns, the due diligence requirements on such accounts should be increased. For example, so stricter ongoing monitoring of those payment accounts for potential suspicious activities, and restrictions placed on cash deposits and transfers of funds for those consumers. And lastly, we believe that there's a need to introduce robust and more prescriptive awareness-raising measures in the PAD by firms and member states. This would include, for example, financial institutions being obliged to prominently list their basic payment account offers on all of their online and offline marketing materials, including websites, specifying in the PAD that this marketing material must include information about the basic payment account's general pricing conditions, the procedures to be followed in order to exercise the right to access these accounts, and the methods to access alternative dispute resolution procedures for the settlement of disputes, for example, in the case where the opening of an account is denied. And lastly, requiring member states to have at least one comparison website for payment accounts in their jurisdiction that is operated by a public authority, and which includes basic accounts. And with this, I conclude and hand back to my colleague, Mr. Paul Fox.
Thank you very much, Peter. I think a really rich run through the study, what's in the report, the situation as it stands for this crucial piece of European legislation, the Basic Payments Account Directive, and what we need to do to address the issues that have been outlined. So please remember that we have the Q&A function. If you have any questions, you can start adding them in already. We'll collect them up after the next presentation and then open the discussion. So next, though, I'm delighted to introduce Dr. Duygu Damar-Blanken from the Responsible Finance Institute in Hamburg. Dr. Damar-Blanken has a huge amount of experience to share with us today. Her main field of expertise is private international law, comparative law, anti-discrimination law, contract law, and commercial law, but she is also here to share with us the experience of working in financial inclusion as an expert here, as part of the Consumer Research Network, the German Federal Ministry, and also as part of the Financial Inclusion Europe Network. We are lucky to have a deep dive into the research that she conducted as part of this study in Germany, and to get some key insights into the situation there. So without further ado, I'd like to hand over to you.
Thank you very much. I am going to share my screen first, and can everybody see my slide? Okay. I hope everybody can see the slide, the PowerPoint presentation. Thank you. Well, I would like to start by thanking the Finance Watch for giving the Institute for Responsible Finance the opportunity to take part in this important study and to present the results on the situation in Germany at this event. Before I would like to go onto my deep dive onto the situation in Germany, I would like to say a few words on the Institute for Responsible Finance. For those who do not know us, we are a non-profit and independent research organization situated in Hamburg, Germany, and we conduct interdisciplinary research in the area of financial consumer protection. And in our research, our guiding principles are the fair participation of all groups in the financial system, social fairness, and equity. As Peter and Paul already addressed, I'm going to present the situation in Germany today. First of all, Payment Accounts Directive has been implemented into German law by the Payment Accounts Act of April 11, 2016. And the provisions of this act on basic payment accounts entered into force on June 18th of the same year. As you all already know, we conducted the German leg of the Finance Watch study on the effectiveness of the directive and its national implementation. To this end, we conducted a mystery shopping exercise and a qualitative survey for identifying the main causes for access barriers to basic payment accounts, especially for vulnerable consumers in Germany. In total, we conducted 15 mystery shopping exercises with 2 testers and with 3 different profiles. Since the study focused on vulnerable consumer groups, the profiles range from a young German homeless person with no fixed address, an Iranian citizen with a temporary residence permit, and a volunteer helping out a Lebanese refugee. In addition to the mystery shopping exercise, we conducted a survey with 4 experts, 3 from consumer advice centers and 1 from a job center, and asked them about their experiences on access barriers vulnerable consumer groups face in practice in access to basic payment accounts. And we determined barriers in 3 key areas, namely availability, accessibility, and affordability of the basic payment account. As Peter addressed, all banks and saving banks in Germany generally offer basic payment accounts. Therefore, officially, there's a very high level of availability. Nonetheless, in practice, availability of basic payment accounts does not look very promising, unfortunately, in Germany. First of all, banks do not advertise and list information on basic payment accounts in their marketing material. Additionally, not all banks proactively offer basic payment accounts when asked about the different types of payment accounts. According to an expert of a consumer advice center, access to a basic payment account is only possible if the person specifically asks for it, or if the person is assisted by an expert of a consumer advice center. In our mystery shopping exercise, only in 8 out of 15 cases were our testers proactively offered a basic payment account. And here I would like to also refer to an expert interview which we conducted for one of our other projects. The project was about age discrimination and lending. In Germany, in addition to consumer advice centers, there are also anti-discrimination advice centers. And for the purposes of the study, we interviewed an expert of an anti-discrimination advice center. She shared one of the cases she handled in the recent years, where she had to go from bank to bank with an elderly person of non-German background for assisting her in opening a payment account. Until the very last bank, which was, I believe, the fifth or the sixth bank, none of the banks they visited offered a payment account or informed them on basic payment accounts. Therefore, we can conclude that an active engagement of banks for informing consumers on basic payment accounts is almost completely lacking in Germany. In our mystery shopping exercise, we also observed that access to basic payment account is not guaranteed, even if a person asks specifically for it. In some of our case studies, bank staff informed the tester that they either do not offer basic payment accounts or they did offer in the past, but they do not offer anymore. Since I have just mentioned the bank staff, I would like to take this opportunity also to address the knowledge and competence of bank staff regarding basic payment accounts. Only in 5 of our 15 case studies, the bank staff was able to provide sufficient information and/or explanations on basic payment accounts. In one of the cases, the bank staff even did not know the name of the basic payment account. And finally, even if the bank offers information on basic payment accounts, be it proactively or upon the request of the consumer, they can nevertheless reject opening a basic payment account on grounds which are legally not allowed. In one of our cases, for instance, the opening of the basic payment account was initially rejected due to the person being unemployed. And after the bank staff talked with other staff members, the reason for the rejection was changed to it not being possible due to an account having existed in the past with another bank. In some other cases, the bank staff showed no effort to offer a basic payment account to the tester, and they rather showed effort to convince the tester to open another payment account instead of a basic payment account, which was in general allegedly discontinued and not being offered anymore. Even if a basic payment account is in practice available, this does not necessarily guarantee access of vulnerable consumer groups to it. There exist several barriers, first of which relates to language. We observed for the purposes of the study that in the majority of cases, application forms are available only in German. Merely in a few exceptions, they are provided also in English. A further barrier is caused by the fact that basic payment accounts generally cannot be opened online. Only in very limited cases do banks offer this possibility in Germany. In general, consumers should go to a branch and make an appointment. And as it is the case in other European countries, the number of bank branches are decreasing quite rapidly in Germany. Therefore, this is in itself an important access barrier that consumers have to go to a bank branch in order to open a basic payment account. A further problem is caused in case of online banks. Our qualitative survey showed that online banks generally simply do not respond to the applications for opening a basic payment account, although legally they should respond and open the account in 10 days. And another problem, which Peter also already referred to, is caused by the documents requested by banks for opening a basic payment account. In 80% of the cases in Germany, banks require a proof of residence or a residence permit, which makes the access to basic payment account for persons without a fixed address, as well as for refugees and asylum seekers, quite difficult. And last but not least, certain vulnerability cases seem to be an exclusion criterion for banks. In one of the cases, for example, the bank staff was quite alarmed at the word debt advisor, meaning that when the applicant is over indebted, the bank was quite reluctant to offer a basic payment account. And one of the main issues regarding basic payment accounts in Germany constitutes the fees charged by banks. German Payment Accounts Act provides that the account owner is obliged to pay fees for basic payment accounts, but fees must be reasonable. In a case which was decided by the German Federal Court in 2020, a bank was offering basic payment accounts for a monthly fee of €8.99. The same bank, on the other hand, was offering a similar payment account for a monthly fee of €4.99. The case was at the end decided by the German Federal Court, and after careful consideration of relevant legal provisions, the German Federal Court ruled that the main aim of the rule regarding reasonable fees is to achieve the socio-political objective of the Payment Accounts Directive and of the Payment Accounts Act in Germany, which is facilitating access for those who have so far been excluded from access to payment accounts. According to the Federal Court, increased prices for basic payment accounts will be inconsistent with the socio-political objective of the directive and the German Act, since they will provide a factual access barrier. Consequently, it is not far-fetched to say that banks, under current legal situation in Germany, can increase their fees for similar account models to basic payment accounts and thus create a very effective obstacle for vulnerable consumer groups. Because as long as the fees for their basic payment account do not exceed the fees for their similar payment account models, their pricing policy does not conflict with the German Federal Court ruling. In our study, we determined that currently annual fees for basic payment accounts across banks range from 58.80 to 143.40 euros, resulting in a monthly fee of minimum 4.99 to a maximum of 11.95 euros. When compared with the fees for similar payment accounts of the same banks, it is quite clear that currently banks in Germany align their fees for basic payment accounts with their similar payment account models. Therefore, we can conclude that the current legal situation in Germany provides protection only against higher fees, but not against high fees for basic payment accounts, fortunately. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much. And I think really interesting to get into the details of the study and of the research that's been done, the situation in Germany. Thank you so much for walking us through that, Duygu, and just, I think, really illustrating the need for more work on this directive for the review of the Payments Account Directive at EU level. That's what this study is showing. That's what the evidence is showing. It's what the research on the ground is showing. So another call to anyone who has questions, please do use the question and answer function. We do have a first question coming through, which I'd like to put to the panelists straight away. Perhaps, Peter, if I could come to you first. We have a question here on the analysis that's conducted in the report, being a deep analysis for 3 member states, but a question from the audience on how you assess the situation at EU level as a whole, and do you think financial institutions are ready and accessible enough for the most vulnerable consumers? Peter, maybe come to you first.
Right, thank you. Right, so as I set out earlier when describing the methodology of the report, so we picked, these 3 member states to have geographical representation, so to cover south, center, and east of the EU in order for really to have representativeness. So we do believe that these findings from these 3 member states are actually applicable, you know, have representativeness, if you will, across the EU. So these kinds of barriers that we've talked about, most of them are an issue, you know, not just in Germany and Romania. This is a pan-European problem, which is why also, you know, we're advocating for a pan-European solution, i.e., the revision of the EU Payment Accounts Directive, which regulates the payment accounts market in the EU. You also know, you know, having spoken to members, for example, you know, I'm in the financial services user group, an expert group of the European Commission. Also, having spoken to them, I also know that, you know, this is an issue in many other member states as well. So, yeah, I hope that answers the question. I don't know, maybe Ms. Duygu Damar-Blanken, maybe you would like to add something.
Well, maybe I can add to that. Well, not from a methodological perspective, but if in 3 geographically representative countries the situation is as it is, as reported in the study, I don't believe the situation is quite different in other European countries. It's maybe certain problems will be less, certain points will be less problematic maybe compared to Germany or Romania, but nevertheless, I can imagine that the access barriers are there.
Thanks very much. And I think what we've seen, you know, from input from member organizations at Finance Watch and from looking into this topic now for a number of years is that this is, although the study is focusing and going into depth and deep analysis on these 3 member states, that we do have similar issues, as Peter and Duygu have said, across the EU. And that really points to the second part of the question. Are financial institutions readily accessible enough for the most vulnerable? Will there from the financial services point of view, I think the clear answer we've got here is we need to ensure that access to the basic payment account as the first access point for many consumers, many vulnerable consumers, is there if we want to consider that they are accessible enough. Moving on to some more questions. Duygu, maybe come to you if I could, and just ask a question about the consumer advice centres that you've mentioned. One of the questions we would like to ask is if they have received high numbers of complaints regarding these basic payments accounts. You've mentioned a little bit of the situation, but if you could say a word on that.
Sure. Interestingly, they don't receive a high number of complaints on basic payment accounts. And the basic reason probably for that is that most of the consumers are not aware of the basic payment accounts. So this is not an issue where consumer advice centers receive a high number of complaints. But rather, maybe I can go into the enforcement issue in Germany very quickly and then report on that. According to German law, if a bank rejects opening a basic payment account, consumers have several options for enforcing their rights for a basic payment account. One of which is that they can apply or complain to the German Federal Financial Supervisory Authority, and then the supervisory authority can order the bank to conclude the contract for the basic payment account and then open the basic payment account. And this procedure is even free of charge for consumers. Another option would be, of course, that the consumers apply to the consumer arbitration boards, and there are several authorized consumer arbitration boards, or they can, of course, institute legal proceedings before courts. And as far as we can see, consumers, if they are aware of the basic payment accounts and if they would like to file a complaint, they in general turn to the German Federal Financial Supervisory Authority instead of to consumer advice centers.
Brilliant, thank you. Yeah, perhaps moving on to a linked question as well. On the situation of comparison websites, we know that these websites are available online, that many consumers look to those websites. And I guess, yeah, we just wanted to maybe Peter, come to you first and ask something about those comparison websites, if you have a comment for us, but then also perhaps Duygu, come to you afterwards on the situation of those sites in Germany in particular. Peter.
Right, thank you very much for this, yeah, very good question. So this is also something that we cover in the report, actually. So our research findings on comparison websites show that, unfortunately, in all 3 member states that we examined, again, unfortunately, there are serious issues with the comparison websites of basic payment accounts. For one, in some instances, well, many instances actually, when it comes to comparison websites for payment accounts, basic payment accounts are actually not included, only standard accounts. That's issue number 1. Big issue. Second of all, an issue is that very often where comparison websites do exist, they are not easily navigable. So they're not at all user-friendly whatsoever. The worst case really here is the Romanian example. It's really an Excel spreadsheet, which is, impossible for, a regular consumer, even, for someone who's more professional in that sense, to really navigate and to understand. And in addition, in most cases, there's also just the issue of these comparison websites, unfortunately, not being unbiased. So not really being, independent, but instead, really ranking their offers, depending on, commercial relationships that they have with financial services providers. So this is another key issue that we believe should be tackled in a review of the Payment Accounts Directive, which we would like to see in the next mandate.
Thanks, Peter. Duygu, do you have any findings or any experience of comparison
Yes,
websites?
thank you. Yes, unfortunately, the situation in Germany is not at all that different from what Peter just addressed. But I have good news. And the German Federal Financial Supervisory Authority issued a decree last year. And I believe it entered into force in March, so roughly 1 month ago. And the supervisory authority will have a comparison website. And this comparison website will be free of charge. And all banks are obliged to provide information on their payment accounts, including basic payment accounts, for this comparison website to the supervisory authority. And the first reporting period is set as September 2024. So I believe at the end of this year, in the last quarter of this year, we are going to have a comparison website initiated and organized by the German supervisory authority. And this is good news, exceptionally, in this area.
Thank you very much. Some good news, extremely welcome in this area. So definitely something to look out for and for us to be aware of as we move forwards. We've got another question coming in from the audience. It's a question which builds on what we've mentioned about Romania incorporating basic payment account into different financial products. So looking a little bit at this sort of bundling of the basic payment account at the moment at point of sale, and looking into whether or not it's a usual practice in other parts of the world other than Spain and Germany. And the second part of the question here, interesting one to address, is asking whether or not that this is done to sort of bring some cost advantage. So would there be a bigger cost potentially if these basic payment accounts were unbundled? So a question there for the two experts on the panel. Perhaps Peter, if I could, I'll come to you first, and then Duygu, you after.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Paul. So actually, in terms of the study that we conducted, where this problem was actually the most was not, just to clarify, it was not Spain and Germany, it was Romania. So that is where we really witnessed this packaging, this bundling of basic payment accounts with other products, for example, with insurance, with overdrafts even, so products that then whose inclusion not only means that then a basic payment account, which should be free for a vulnerable consumer under Romanian laws, then no longer free, because then they have to end up paying for these bundled products that are packaged together with a payment account. But the other problem also being, as alluded to earlier, that some of these products are just not at all suitable for vulnerable consumers. For example, an overdraft, I would say, for many vulnerable consumers, having an overdraft facility will not be suitable. So that was the issue that we identified. And I think this is a very, very good question. Well, if we were to stop this bundling practice in Romania, would that then not lead to higher costs? Well, according to Romanian national law, the way it's written there, the answer is clearly no. But of course, yes, I mean, the rationale, the reason why banks are doing this, obviously, is that they can still, generate profits from these consumers that they wouldn't if they didn't package the products. So could this then result, if they could no longer bundle the products, would that maybe just result then in those banks no longer wanting maybe to offer basic payment accounts at all anymore because it's no longer attractive to them? I think, yeah, of course that risk would exist, but that's why, again, we would need a strong pad to ensure that this is not the case. Financial inclusion is so important. Having access to a basic payment account, as I said, is not just for financial inclusion, also social inclusion. Is such a huge necessity. So yeah, that would be my reply here.
Thanks a lot, Peter. And yeah, I mean, clearly there is a difficult situation here, and we're talking about a cost. I think in the question we're talking about a cost advantage for the provider if they can bundle products. But the question is whether or not that really translates through to the consumer, and is the consumer benefiting from those products, or are the additional services that they've been sold as part of a collection of products together really giving them more value or presenting them with more risk exposure, or even ending up costing more than it should, and above everything else, is it really respecting the logic, the reason for having a basic payments account, which is to allow access to that account for people who are not currently included? But with that thought, Duygu, do you have anything to share on that question and on those points?
Well, in Germany, banks do not bundle in general. Of course, I'm sure there are some exceptions, but banks do not in general bundle other products with basic payment accounts. But there is a widespread use of they are called Giro accounts or normal checking accounts, and in general those accounts do have are bundled with other products such as credit cards or overdraft facility, in some other exceptional cases, some additional products. I believe that's why this is what, because in our study, in our mystery shopping case studies, we've seen that bank staff in general tries to convince the tester to have another payment account instead of a basic payments account. And I believe because of this bundling, they are trying to convince consumers to have either Giro accounts or other payment account models instead of a basic payment account. Because with a basic payment account, they are not offering so many additional services, and they are they just don't want to, in practice, actually have as many basic payment accounts. They are quite reluctant to open basic payment accounts, and that's why they are trying to actually convince consumers to have, in general, Giro accounts.
Thank you so much, and thank you very much to the questions that have come in from the audience. Thank you very much for having joined us today. We're going to draw the webinar to a close. Just to let you know that the slides and recording will be available. So do check our website, do check the social media, and we'll also send emails through to participants. I'd just like to hand over to Peter, after having said a huge thanks to Duygu as well for the presentation, for the contributions, and Peter as well for a closing word. Peter.
Thank you very much, Paul. So yeah, I'd just like to again, thank everyone again very, very much for attending our event on this important topic today, for taking your time, lunchtime. I will release you in a minute. Just in closing, I would just like to reiterate again, the message that PAD is an important tool to ensure financial and social inclusion, including for the most vulnerable who have suffered the most from the recent economic crises. The effects of the recent economic crisis and social inclusion is therefore, and understandably so, something that's a key issue for voters as we're heading into the June European Parliament elections. And in addition, revising this piece of legislation to ensure that consumers are protected and not excluded would help create the trust in the financial system, which, according to recent surveys, is low, and is important as well to achieve important goals that already EU policymakers have set for the next mandate, such as relaunching the Capital Markets Union or others. Therefore, really, we would like to urge EU policymakers to revise the directive and incorporate the policy recommendations we presented to you today in the next mandate. So again, thank you very much for attending. Have a nice lunch, and I hope to see you all again very soon.